he came back to his house after making dua. The next day there's a funeral in the Baqi. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam accompanies the funeral to the Baqi. And when he comes out from the funeral and is coming home, his head starts to ache and fever grips him. He's in the house of Maymuna radiallahu anha. So he goes to tell his wives that he has a headache. He comes to the house of Aisha radiallahu anha, and she is crying out, "Wa ra'sa, ah, my head." As in Aisha radiallahu anha, she has a headache too. So the Prophet said, "Bal ana wa ra'sa ya Aisha." No, ya Aisha, my head is the one that is hurting. So they exchanged a few niceties, and the Rasul went. And the fever started to become worse. They say we used to put our hands on the turban of the Prophet and feel the heat of his head burning through the turban. His period of sickness would last some 14 days. And all the while, or for the bulk of it, he still led the salah. He still dealt with the issues of the ummah. He still judged. He still counseled. He still prepared armies. And he still led the salawat. But he's sick. He's very ill. And the headache is immense. And he still visits his wives according to their routines. But every house he goes to, he says, "Where am I tomorrow? Which house am I in tomorrow?" And they would say, "You're in this person's house." But when he kept on saying, they realized that maybe there's a house he wants to be in, and out of the adab of the Rasul, he wants to say, "Take me to this person's house." So they said, "Ya Rasulullah, where do you want to be?" He said, "If you permit, I want to stay with Aisha radiallahu anha." So they said, "Go, we give permission, Ya Rasul." So Fadl ibn Abbas and Ali ibn Abi Talib came under his arms, and they carried him to the house of Aisha radiallahu anha. And his blessed feet were dragging on the floor as he entered the house of Aisha. And she, seeing him, came around him and would read the maw'idhat and blow on the hands of the Prophet, and with his own hands rub the body. Her philosophy was, he doesn't have the energy to read it, so I will read it. But the barakah is in the hands of the Rasul, so I will rub his own hands on his body instead. And this continued until a Thursday, Wednesday night. So he prayed Fajr and Zuhur and Asr and Maghrib in Jama'ah. When Isha came, his headache is acute. So he said, "Pour water on me." They poured water on him. He dressed. He got up, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and fell down and fainted. So the family are around him, and the ummah is waiting in the mosque. So after a while he gained consciousness, and he said, "Have they prayed?" So they said, "No, Ya Rasul. How will they pray and the Imam of the Prophets is here?" So he said, "Pour water on me." So they poured water on him to subside the fever. He got up again and fainted again. Then he woke up and he said, "Have they prayed?" They said, "No, Ya Rasul." He said, "Pour water on me." They poured water. He got up and fainted again. And then this time he woke up and he said, "Muru Aba Bakr falyusalli bin nas." Order Abu Bakr to lead the people in salah. And from this time onwards, he is not able to pray in the masjid anymore or lead the salah. 5 days before his demise, he told them, gather water from the 7 wells and pour it on top of me. They did. They wrapped his head up so it could hold the pain. They carried him to the mosque. He sat on the minbar. The Muslims gathered around him. And then he sallallahu alayhi wasallam gave them advices. From the advices is لعن الله اليهود والنصارى اتخذوا قبور أنبيائهم مسجدا لا تتخذوا قبري من بعدي وثنا يعبد. Allah cursed the Jews and the Christians because they took the graves of their prophets as places of worship. Don't take my grave after me as a place of worship. Don't start grave worshipping after my death. These are the dying wishes of your prophet. Don't ask help from this and from that. Turn your direction to the Dhul Arsh al-Majid and Fa'alul lima yurid. And then he sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever I have hurt, here's my back. Come and take your qisas from me. Whoever I owe any money, ask so I can return your money. Whoever I have dishonored, here's my honor. Come and take your segment from me. So one of the Muslims got up, Ya Rasul, you owe me 3 dinars or 3 dirhams. So he ordered his family pay him. So the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam paid. They gave the adhan. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed in the seating position, and then he got up on the minbar again after it. O Muslims, whoever I have hurt, come and take your compensation from me. Whoever I have taken money from, ask for your money so that I can return it. Whoever I have harmed with my tongue as in dishonored, come and take your compensation from me. So, and imagine if this is the situation of the Rasul, that he doesn't want to take anything to the court of Allah or to sort out any issues in the presence of Allah Rabbul Izzah. What is mine in your situation? Finalize your affairs in this dunya before you meet your Lord in the akhirah, Muslims. And then he sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the servant was given a choice between living in this world for eternity or meeting his Lord. He opted the meeting of his Lord. So they say, Abu Bakr started to shout from the back, and he said, فَدَيْنَاكَ بِآبَائِنَا وَأُمَّهَاتِنَا يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ فَدَيْنَاكَ بِآبَائِنَا وَأُمَّهَاتِنَا يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ فَدَيْنَاكَ بِآبَائِنَا وَأُمَّهَاتِنَا يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. We will sacrifice our fathers and mothers for you, O Prophet of Allah. So the Muslims looked back. Why is the Sheikh screaming? The Prophet was talking about a servant. Why is he saying we will sacrifice our children and our family for you? And then they say when he died, we realized that Abu Bakr knew the Prophet more than any one of us. And he understood the murad of Allah and the murad of the Rasul more than any one of us. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إِنَّ أَمَنَّ النَّاسِ عَلَيَّ بِمَالِهِ وَصُحْبَتِهِ Abu Bakr. The one who I am indebted to the most from the creation because of his wealth and his companionship is in Abu Bakr. I have repaid all other debts, but I leave the debt of Abu Bakr to Allah Rabbul Izzah to repay. وَلَوْ كُنْتُ مُتَّخِذًا مِنَ الْبَشَرِ خَلِيلًا لَاتَّخَذْتُ أَبَا بَكْرٍ خَلِيلًا. And if I could choose a friend from amidst mankind, I would have opted for Abu Bakr as a friend. But وَلَكِنْ أُخُوَّةُ الْإِسْلَامِ وَصُحْبَةِ. But the companionship of Islam and the brotherhood of Islam and the companionship of prophethood is sufficient for him. And then he said, all these gates that open into the masjid, block them, cement, wall them, except for the door of Abu Bakr, because it is a hint he will become a Khalifa after me. He will need direct access to the masjid. Leave his gate open. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned to his house, and he wasn't able to join the jama'ah or the salah after this. And this continued until a Saturday, where he sallallahu alaihi wasallam started to feel a bit better, and the people are in salah, And then he asks, take me to join the Jama'ah. So as they bring him, carrying him, there's a commotion amidst the ashab, looking that the Rasul has come, farahan bi Rasulillah, that the Rasul has finally come. The beloved is entering the masjid, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu felt, the presence of the Rasul coming. Nothing else would disturb the salah of the ashab. So the mu'addab Abu Bakr stepped back, to give the place of imamat to the Rasul. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam pushed him on his back. Lead the salah, Abu Bakr, I will sit next to you. So the Prophet would pray isharatan, and Abu Bakr would convey the message with his actions to the ummah. And then he sallallahu alaihi wasallam went back. And this is a day before the last day of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in the last day of the Rasul, the Salat of Fajr has started, Adhan has gone, and the mosque is filled to the brim with Muslims whose heart is sinking, sad at the condition of the Rasul. Gham and ham has taken the whole of Medina. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha. And once they're all standing, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam moves the curtain to take a final glance at the ashab, to see the fruits of his labor, the garden that he had planted, men who are only best to the prophets after them. وَخَيْرُ الْخَلَائِقِ بَعْدَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ, the ashab of the Rasul. So when they sensed that he's moved the curtain, they were about to come out of their salah, happy at the sight of the Rasul. And he motioned, continue in your salah. So when the salah finished, they came to him, rushing to the beloved, and they see him. MashaAllah, his face is beaming with joy. He looks happy. He looks refreshed. He looks like he's recovering. So they said, MashaAllah, Ya Rasulullah, you look like you're recovering. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam confirmed, I am feeling better. So the ashab came. Abu Bakr said, Alhamdulillah, you look well, Ya Rasul. Can I have permission to visit my family in Sunh, some 1.5 kilometers away from the masjid? The Prophet said, go. Other ashab came and talked to the Rasul for a few moments. And then suddenly his health took a turn to the worst. The fever came all over again, and the headache increased. And he is there in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha, Aisha. And his daughter comes in. So he greeted her and kissed her, and she sat. So he beckoned her. So she came near, and he whispered in her ear. So she held her face and started to cry. And seeing her condition, he called her again. So she came closer. He whispered again. She started to smile and laugh. So Aisha asked her later on, what did the Prophet say? She said, the first time he said, every year Jibreel used to come to me once. This year he has come twice. It seems like my ajal is near. And you will be the first of my family to join me. So she cried. And then he called her again, and he said, aren't you satisfied, Ya Fatima, that you are Sayyidatun Nisa'i Ahlil Jannah? Won't you be pleased? Ama tardini an takuni Sayyidatun Nisa'i Ahlil Jannah. So she said, I smiled. Won't you be pleased if you are the queen of the righteous in Jannah? So then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam his head is lying on the chest of our mother. She says, "Bayna sahri wa nahri," on my chest. And there's a pot of water, and he puts his hand in the pot and he rubs it on his face. And he says, "La ilaha illallah, inna lil mawti sakarat." And then he puts his hand again and he rubs it. "La ilaha illallah, inna lil mawti sakarat." There's no God but Allah. Verily, death has its pangs. And the door knocked. And the brother of Aisha radiallahu anha enters. And he has a siwak. So the Prophet looked at the siwak. And Aisha radiallahu anha noticed. So she said, "Do you want it, Ya Rasul?" So he nodded, as though thinking, I will be meeting the Dhul Arsh al-Majid and fa'alul lima yurid. Let me siwak my teeth. So she summoned for the siwak and softened it with her own teeth and with her own saliva, and then started to siwak his teeth. And he touches the water and puts it on his forehead. So then the fever increased. She panicked. And she reads the maw'idat to rub it on him. But he says, "No, ya Aisha, but salillahumma ar-rafiq al-a'la." Instead, ask Allah to grant me the companionship of the ones most high. And then Aisha says he looked up as though he saw something. And then he said, "Allahumma ar-rafiq al-a'la." Oh Allah, the companionship of the ones most high. And she says he lifted his hand and his hand dropped. So she said, I said to myself, the Rasul had told me that the prophets are given a choice before death, either to live for eternity or the meeting of their Lord. And the Prophet has chosen the meeting of his Lord. And as his hands dropped, the room became filled with fragrance. As the angels, when they take a righteous soul, they wrap it in the finest of perfumes. And Salama says, when he died, crying, sadness filled the room. And she comes near him, putting her hand on his blessed chest. And he's sweating because of the fever. So she said, a perfume covered my hand. And Jum'ah came and Jum'ah went, Friday came and Friday went. I used to wash and eat in wudu, and the scent would not go away from my hand. So as the hand of the Rasul fell, they realized that the Prophet has passed away. Aisha radiallahu anha, crying, sent, go call my father. His friend has passed away. Hafsa radiallahu anha, go call my father. The Prophet has passed away. The first person to enter the room of Aisha after the death of the Rasul was Umar ibn al-Khattab when he heard the news. But Umar is in total denial. He knocked, asked permission. Aisha covered herself. The other wives covered themselves. In the time of ham and gham, na'am, even in time of difficulty, they never forsook the deen.